Hey guys, Steve Moran here with a special edition of Senior Living. Oh man, I blew that again. At Foresight TV. I want to get this right. So let's start with our little intro. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Today I want to welcome my friend Jack Sterne, who is a co-founder of Luminant. And Jack and his organization are just completely focused on creating healthy buildings. And today we want to talk very specifically about how healthy buildings actually tie directly to occupancy and sales, because we know that right now there may be 3 buildings in the whole country that are not struggling to get their occupancy back up in the face of the pandemic. So Jack, welcome.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you.
So we're going to talk about 3 things. Let's sort of start with a high level and talk a little bit about sort of this whole idea of healthy buildings and what that means.
Sure. I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot of times before. I think there are a lot of components to a healthy building. But I think the big idea here is how you care for your building really sends a huge message to potential residents and their families about how well you care for your staff. I mean, I'm sorry, how well you care for your residents, staff too. But that's the idea, is that a well-maintained building that looks good and has the right technology in terms of keeping the people in it healthy is probably one of the top things you can do to help attract residents in this time in particular. So
how do we, I think that typically, so first I want to actually back up. I think one of the best illustrations of this, and you talked about your dog, and I'd like you to share about that, but I think for me, one of the things that happens to me is I'm at a computer all day, every day, right? And once in a while, I'll look at my screen and I'll go, I cannot believe how dirty, disgusting that is. And that if somebody else saw and looked at it, they think I was a pig. So yeah, this is a big problem, right?
Well, right. You and I were talking about, you've been gone for a week and you have a dog, I have a dog. You come in the house and you're like, wow, that dog really needs a bath. But you didn't know that before you left because you're living with a dog all the time. And I think the same thing happens when we, in our communities, is that little maintenance things, chips on the paint, these kinds of things that the everyday staff just doesn't see. Families and potential residents see that stuff and it matters to them. And like I was saying, it just sends a huge message about how you're going to care for them once they're in the building. Because if you don't see that stuff, what else are you not seeing, right?
Well, that's right. And I have walked in, of course, I'm not into buildings because of the pandemic right now, but in a normal year, I probably go into 50 or 100 buildings just in the course of knocking around the world. And I would say, I don't know what it is, probably 10% of the time I walk into a building that has terrible smells.
Yeah.
And I assume people don't even know that it's there because they're used to it.
No, that's exactly right. I've had the same experience and it's definitely off-putting. And you could see if you were doing a tour with a potential family and they experience that, they're probably going somewhere else, right? Now, fortunately, that is number 2 on our list of the 3 things that you can do to make your building more attractive to potential residents in this time. And that is bipolar ionization. I think, a lot of people in the industry are aware of bipolar ionization as a way to address COVID. It has the benefit, it's an air cleaning technology, helps get rid of viruses, bacteria, mold, allergens. It also has the effect of reducing odors. And so that's just a huge thing. I mean, you do so much to improve your position in the market when you knock down odors, but also are able to say to potential residents, look, we have installed the latest and greatest technology to keep our air clean, to reduce the spread of disease, right?
So let's actually talk a little bit about what it takes. So let's talk a little bit about what it does first, and then I'd like to talk about what it takes to install bipolar ionization.
Sure. So without getting too technical, what you're doing is sending out a huge field of ions through your HVAC system. And you get something called agglomeration, where particles in the air actually will attach to those ions and fall out of the air column. It makes them a lot easier to filter out through your HVAC system. They'll also fall to the floor, where they're much easier to clean. And I think one of the things we know about COVID now is that the evidence for surface transmission is pretty low. So if you can get viral particles out of the air and down to the floor, you've accomplished a lot right there.
So I have to ask you a question. I just thought of this. So I know it's always a little dangerous to be on with me. Sometimes I ask questions that I probably shouldn't. But does that, when they fall to the floor, does that mean that I then am tracking them around on my shoes?
Well, it could be, but who cares, right?
Okay.
Because you're not going to breathe in particles off your shoes. And really what we care about with COVID is breathing it in. And it's, once it's on your shoe, you've gone a long way to neutralizing it right there. But the beauty of the ionization technology is it also begins to change the molecular structure of the particles that it adheres to. So you're also getting you're getting a neutralization of the particle right there.
Okay, terrific. And this is something that you attach to your HVAC system, is that right?
Yep, it's a very simple retrofit. We cut a quick hole in your air handler, install it. It's it doesn't even require permits. There's no electrical wire. I mean, we do wire it in, but it's a very simple procedure.
And how long does it take to start working?
We did a great test on this last week at ALG Seniors office building in Hickory, North Carolina, where we turned it off. We had installed it in their office. We turned it off over the weekend because when nobody was going to be there. We installed our air monitoring technology and turned the system back on, and we could see within half an hour that the particle load in the building had dropped from very high levels down to very low levels, which are considered good air quality.
Cool. So what's it cost to do this?
So it's really not that bad, Steve. You're installing several units, typically in your central HVAC system, as opposed to at the room level. And we're talking about, again, it depends on the size of the community, between $10,000 and $20,000 a building. Okay. And it's not going to break the bank. The beauty of it is that it's also going to provide energy efficiency. You're actually going to decrease the amount of fresh air you have to have in your system. And so what that's going to do for you is let your HVAC system be more efficient. You have cleaner air without having to recycle as much fresh air. And that's what really runs your heating or cooling bills up.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really interesting, and I was actually having this conversation with our friends at Dreamscape yesterday, run a digital marketing agency. And one of the things we see happening is that people will spend big dollars on things they're used to spending dollars on, and they won't spend dollar, even a fraction of that cost on other things because it's sort of new and not thought, and they just haven't done it before.
Right.
And what I find fascinating about this is that if this prevents one resident from getting sick and going to the hospital, or it creates a air quality that keeps one resident from being turned off from your building, or or even just talking about it impresses one prospect to the point where they choose you over somebody else, it's paid for itself in, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months, right?
Well, pretty much. And as you know, we always try to find technologies that pay for themselves through their energy savings, right? And we think this is another one of those technologies. But the point you make are also another way to quantify the benefits, because what is the cost of a norovirus outbreak, for instance? We know that that's huge. What's the cost of an influenza outbreak? We all know what the cost of a COVID outbreak has been over the last year, and that's tremendous. And, even though we're all in this industry vaccinated these days, we still have variants on the horizon. People are going to be thinking about air quality in their buildings for quite a long time. And I think smart consumers, smart families are going to be asking what you're doing to clean the air there.
Yeah, and so this is such a good point, Jack, because I think that if I were selling senior living and I were touring somebody, this is one of the things I'd be talking about, and suggesting, maybe even directly or at least subtly, that if they're going to go look at other communities, they should really be asking them what they're doing to make sure the air is maximally safe in those communities. And those become very, very powerful selling tools for sure.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. And we actually can install a TV monitor in the lobby, right in the entranceway, that people can, just press on for more information about the air cleaning systems, and we'll pop up and show them a quick video on how it works, and sends that message again. This is how we care for our residents, right?
Well, the thing I wonder about that might be pretty cool to do would be to actually take your air monitoring technology and put that on a big screen.
Well, that's what we'll do,
right?
Yeah, that's what we'll do. But we can actually broadcast. I mean, we have, it's got a small monitor like this, but we can broadcast information on that screen to a much larger screen, and that's definitely one of the things we'll do for people, just to help them with the marketing, because that's another thing that we as a company always try to do for our clients, is figure out how to help them market to potential residents. It's one of the reasons, as you know, we brought in as our VP of operations, Susan Verbis, who's got over 20 years of experience in the industry and started out running buildings and really knows how to talk to families about what we're doing.
So I want to actually circle back for a minute, Jack, to our first point, and then we'll talk some more about lighting. But I want to talk at first. I want to talk a little bit about how do you get. I think when you look at things like having a healthy building, we tend to look at that and say, well, maybe that's the maintenance director's problem. Maybe it's the executive director's problem, and maybe it's the wellness nurses, the wellness director's problem. But it's sort of not my problem. Do you have thoughts about how you sort of make this a thing that everybody needs to be paying attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to give complete credit to Susan Verbis, who I just mentioned, for these ideas. But she was mentioning to me that when there was a startup that she was involved with as the CEO, and one of the things she created was a checklist for the housekeeping staff. And housekeeping staff were in the building or in each room once a week. And it was really a maintenance checklist. Is there a light bulb burned out? Are there paint, is there paint chipped off the walls? Is there a smoke detector with a battery beeping? All of these little things that, everybody's responsible for and nobody's responsible for. And maybe the maintenance, every maintenance person that we see in these buildings, they're super harried, and they don't necessarily have a good way of cataloging all of these things. One of the things we do have, and I absolutely don't mean this to be a sales pitch, is that we have a maintenance monitoring system that we do for our clients, so that, because we, with things like lighting and the BPI, we actually own those systems and we're responsible for the maintenance. So it's we do those systems as a service. So one of the reasons we're so attuned to maintaining buildings is because that's part of our core responsibility, right? We have to maintain the lighting systems, operate them, HVAC systems, anything like that we do for you is going to come with maintenance as part of it. So we have a sophisticated maintenance reporting system that we use for our clients, but this doesn't even have to be that sophisticated. It's seriously just giving a checklist to your housekeeping staff and saying, tick this off. If there's paint chipped off the wall, there's a light out, give it to the concierge at the front desk. That person can put a work order into the system, and those things can get resolved before a family's on a tour and they see them. It also has the benefit, as we know, with inspections, whether it's a state inspection or a HUD inspection, you lose points for all that kind of stuff. And so it's not just that the families see it and get turned off. It can potentially cost you on your license as well.
Yep. And it's interesting, my first thinking is, well, everybody has one of these checklists, but I actually don't think that's true. I have a good friend who changed from one senior living organization to another, and as an executive director. And in both cases, he was expected, rightly so, to kind of make rounds of the building every morning when he came in, just to make sure everything looked and smelled and was the way it was supposed to be. But when he made this change, the new company actually had a tablet that had kind of a checkoff that said, go to this place, check off, check these things, go to that place, check these things. And on one hand, you can look at that and you say, well, that's really sort of basic and almost juvenile, except I'll tell you what, you better be glad that every time you get into an airline, your pilots are doing that, and they get paid big bucks to do that, right? Yeah. And the reason they do it is it's so important. If you miss those things, the damage is so huge.
That's right. And the other idea that Susan was batting around, in addition to this checklist, was she likes the idea of having, when you have your weekly staff get together, every part of the community, whether it's dining, whether it's maintenance, whether it's housekeeping, whoever's in charge of all those different functions, go walk every part of the building. Because you, as the executive director, for instance, again, going back to this idea of being nose blind to what your dog smells like, you become blind to things that you see every day and maybe haven't made it onto that checklist. And so getting other sets of eyes than what you're used to, looking at the various components of your building, can really help in terms of figuring those things out and addressing them in a way that is going to help you fill up the building.
Yep. So it's so important. And by the way, I do want to tell the audience that that Jack and his team have put together a little checklist, and we'll give you the opportunity to let us know you want it, and we'll send that out to you as well at the end of the show. So we'll give you that information as we get to the end of the half hour. And John Gonzalez, I agree. Wall-mounted televisions, TVs with cords just hanging down is really terrible. Although in some defense, sometimes you have very little choice on that in older buildings. And the last thing, Jack, I wanted to say is I love this idea of touring. You could sort of gamify it, right? So you take everybody around as a game, and you give away a Starbucks card to whoever gets the finds the most things wrong or something.
Right. I mean, yeah, you have to create a culture of looking for those things and actually getting them into the maintenance log so that they can get fixed. And if you don't, it's going to hurt you.
So let's move on to the third thing, which is lighting.
Yeah.
So how do we how do we look at lighting? How do we think about lighting? If we've got lighting problems, how do we fix lighting in a way that's cost effective?
Well, lighting is absolutely one of the things that's going to have the biggest impact on how your community looks and feels to residents. I think we've all been in buildings that were underlit, not just underlit, but also terribly lit in terms of the way the lighting was designed. Yeah. And I'm not talking about fancy chandeliers. I'm just talking about the way the light fills a hallway or doesn't fill a hallway. You and I have looked at, I know in other venues, I've put up that photo of, before and after photo of the hallway that had a bunch of can lights on it, and the spots that it creates on the ground. It creates a spot of light with a big area of shadow around it. And that's a big problem for falls, right? The older eye just doesn't like, it wants a uniform lighting pattern. And if you don't have that, it looks bad, but it's also objectively bad for your residents, because it can, it's going to make them tentative, and it's also, it looks like there's a transition there and makes them more likely to fall in your hallway. So, but you want you want your building to feel like it's you're bringing daytime inside during the day, but you want it to feel calm and restful in the evenings and in the early morning hours. And that's where our circadian lighting technology comes in. It basically creates a natural cycle of day and night in the building, which is critical for so many measures of health for seniors. It helps restore a natural circadian rhythm, which helps them sleep better. Some studies have shown as much as a half an hour improvement in sleep time per day from circadian lighting, getting that circadian rhythm trained right. It improves their depression, particularly in memory care residents, huge problems with depression, agitated behaviors, and getting the right lighting improves all of those things. Not to mention that it just feels better when you walk in there. So, that's one of the most innovative things I think we're doing on the technology side is circadian lighting. And the good news is that the circadian lighting is only about 30% more expensive than just a regular LED lighting system. Most LED lighting systems, if you're replacing older lighting, are going to pay for themselves just with the energy savings alone. If you're in a high cost of power state like California, circadian lighting is going to pay for itself just based on energy savings alone. Forget about all of the health benefits. But again, going back to this idea we were talking about with BPI, right, which is preventing somebody from going to the hospital, circadian lighting does the same thing for you. Because you're preventing falls, you're improving mood, and when you do those things, people are more active. When they're more active, they're in better physical condition, which again helps prevent falls as well. So it's a very positive feedback loop that you create by getting the right lighting in the building.
Well, what's so interesting to me about all of this is that I think in order to get our communities back full, there are just so many things that need to be done. And I wouldn't say you have to hit 100% of everything, in your what your building looks like, how you're doing your sales and marketing, how you're doing lead generation, your programming and everything. But the how your building feels has such a huge impact on your sales process. And I think the thing that really gets missed that you've been talking about, Jack, is that not only does it have an impact on your sales process, but it actually has an impact on your residents and on your staff and how they feel living and working in these communities, right?
Yep. Yeah, we've got a great video on our YouTube channel with some of the nursing staff at Indigo Hall in Charleston, which is an ALG senior building, talking about how much it's helped them not only deal with the residents, how much better they feel underneath the right kind of lighting all day. And, these are little things that you don't think about necessarily, but have a big impact. In fact, I always say some of the best things we do are invisible, right? Yep. You don't even notice they're there, but they make you feel so much better.
Yep. Yeah, that's always one of the problems with selling things like air or light, right? Is that that when they're working right, you don't see them at all. Yeah. But you experience the results.
Yeah, it should be invisible, right? If you can see the air, then you really got a problem.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, so let's talk a little more about the economics of circadian lighting. Just on the surface, it sounds like a big deal and expensive and all of that. And are there any subsidies or anything that go along with that? I want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Depending upon, if you're upgrading an older building, there are a lot of utilities around the country that will that do have rebates for replacing inefficient lighting with more efficient lighting. So that is one way that you can help lower the cost. California is pretty good on that, I think. But most utilities around the country, the major utilities, you get into more rural co-ops and stuff, it's a little spottier. But that's a pretty accepted thing now. The utilities have an interest in getting you to lower your power use, right? And so that's one way to help defray the cost. But again, because it's not just the energy savings, right? That matters. It's the people savings.
Yeah, and that's so important. We've talked mostly about the impact on residents, but I think the impact on team members is equally critical. We're starting to see that people are struggling to hire as we're coming out of the pandemic, and some of the pre-pandemic issues relative to staffing are rearing their ugly head, and I think that people are more aware of their work environments, and so I think this becomes a way to become a more attractive employer.
Agree completely.
So we are. I want to actually make available here this. Let me bring up this. So if you'd like to get this checklist, it's a very simple Excel spreadsheet. So it's something you can modify to use in any way you want. All you need to do is text to 916-659-5287 the word clean, and we will get this out to you. When you text that, you'll get a response back. We'll need a little bit more information so we actually know who you are and we can connect with you, but we'd love to share this resource with you and help you have a better, healthier building along the way. So what else should we talk? So anything else we're missing here, Jack, that we should be talking about?
Well, Steve, there's always a lot to talk about when we get together. I mean,
there is.
Yeah. So no, I think I just would wrap up by just emphasizing those 3 points, right? One is getting all the parts of your organization involved in the maintenance of your community. That I think is just an easy, low-cost thing you can do to help your building present better and make it more attractive to residents. Almost all the things that you're going to find that way don't cost much, but they make a big impact when people see those things. They could be a negative impact when they see those things. Second thing is we talked about bipolar ionization. It is really a critical technology for cleaning the air. It's a very affordable technology. We have, ALG Senior just decided to do that in all of their buildings. I know Brookdale has been doing it. Lots of folks in the senior living sector have decided to adopt this technology as a way to clean the air and to keep their residents safe. And the last thing is just lighting has such a great impact, not just on your power bill, but really on the health and welfare of your residents. And again, how it presents to families when they're touring. And most of the retrofits that we do take less than a week. Our crews specialize in being in senior living buildings, and we have a protocol. We've never had a safety incident with a resident, and we can get in there and knock it out for you quick. It's going to pay for itself. We can finance it so that the savings on your power bill are greater than what your monthly payments to us are. And so that right there, it's found money.
Perfect. That's great, Jack. I appreciate it. Again, if you'd like this free checklist, text us and we'll get that right out to you. And we will also drop the link for Luminant and contact information into the posting on the various social media sites where we're at right after the show is over. So I appreciate having a chance to chat with you about this. I love this stuff. I love your passion for this industry. And, man, I look forward to the time when we can actually hang out together in person. It's coming, though.
I know we got Fall Nick on the horizon, probably Senior Living Innovation Forum as well. But it'd be great if it could happen before then. So
yep. I'm hoping. So Anyway, thank you very much, folks, for watching. And Jack, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. Talk to you soon.